The world is holding its breath. What you're seeing isn't just another chapter in a long and painful history. It's a flashpoint, a moment where decades of simmering tension have erupted, sending shockwaves far beyond the borders of Israel and Gaza. Many are calling this a regional crisis, but that's missing the bigger picture. What we are witnessing is the rapid acceleration of a new global power struggle, a realignment that is redrawing the map of international influence right before our eyes. This isn't just about a strip of land. It's about the future of the global order. And the stakes couldn't be higher for everyone. To understand why this moment is so critical, we need to look beyond the headlines. This conflict didn't begin last month or last year. It's rooted in a complex history of contested land, political promises, and deep-seated grievances stretching back over a century. Following the end of British Mandate rule, the 1948 Arab-Israeli War led to the establishment of Israel and the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians. Subsequent wars in 1967 and 1973 further entrenched these divisions, leading to the occupation of the West Bank and Gaza Strip. The Oslo Accords in the 1990s offered a flicker of hope for a two-state solution, a framework for peace that envisioned an independent Palestinian state alongside Israel. However, that process stalled amidst waves of violence, the expansion of Israeli settlements, and the rise of Hamas, an organization designated as a terrorist group by many countries, which took control of Gaza in 2007. Since then, Gaza has been under a tight blockade by both Israel and Egypt, creating what many describe as an open-air prison. The cycle of rocket fire from Gaza and military responses from Israel has created a brutal and seemingly unbreakable stalemate. This isn't just a historical footnote, it's the strategic foundation upon which the current crisis is built. Every action and reaction is filtered through this lens of unresolved history, making a simple resolution almost impossible. Now, let's talk about your wallet. You might be thousands of miles away, but this conflict is already impacting the global economy. The first and most immediate effect is on oil prices. The Middle East is the world's energy heartland, and any instability there makes the markets nervous. We've already seen crude oil prices spike as traders worry about the conflict spreading. A wider war could directly threaten major oil producers, or, even more critically, disrupt the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow channel through which about a fifth of the world's oil supply passes every single day. If that choke point is threatened, gasoline prices everywhere could skyrocket, fueling inflation and potentially tipping fragile economies into recession. But it's not just about oil. Think about the Suez Canal, another vital artery for global trade. Any disruption in the region puts this crucial shipping lane at risk, threatening to snarl supply chains just as they were recovering from the pandemic. The container ships that bring you everything from electronics to clothes could face lengthy and expensive detours. This isn't theoretical. We saw the chaos a single stuck ship could cause. A prolonged conflict creates a web of economic uncertainty that slows down business, spooks investors, and ultimately affects jobs and the cost of living for people all over the world. The stability we often take for granted is more fragile than it appears. As the West is drawn deeper into the crisis in the Middle East, other global powers are watching, waiting, and repositioning themselves. Nature and geopolitics abhors a vacuum. For Russia and China, this conflict is a strategic opportunity. Let's start with Russia. Let's start with the world's attention and resources shifting from Ukraine to Israel, the pressure on Moscow is significantly reduced. It allows them to press their advantage on the battlefield while also playing the role of a potential mediator in the Middle East, strengthening their ties with Arab nations and Iran. They can paint the West, particularly the United States, as a destabilizing force, a narrative that resonates in many parts of the world. Then there's China. Beijing has long pursued a policy of economic influence over military intervention. This crisis allows them to continue that strategy. They can present themselves as a neutral party, a voice for peace and stability, contrasting their approach with America's military-first posture. They are quietly expanding their economic footprint through the Belt and Road Initiative, signing deals and building infrastructure while the U.S. is busy managing crises. This isn't a direct confrontation, but a slow, methodical erosion of Western influence. The world is becoming more multipolar, and this conflict is accelerating that trend, forcing smaller nations to hedge their bets and reconsider old alliances. The unipolar moment, where the U.S. was the undisputed global leader, is definitively over. This brings us to the United States, which finds itself in an incredibly difficult strategic bind. Washington is juggling multiple competing priorities. On one hand, there is the ironclad commitment to Israel's security, a cornerstone of U.S. foreign policy for decades. This has meant providing military aid, intelligence support, and diplomatic cover. On the other hand, the U.S. is trying to prevent a wider regional war that could draw in Iran and its proxies, like Hezbollah in Lebanon. This requires a delicate diplomatic dance, using the threat of military force as a deterrent while simultaneously pushing for de-escalation. The deployment of 2 aircraft carrier strike groups to the region is a powerful signal, a message of deterrence to anyone thinking of escalating. But it's a risky move. It increases the chances of a miscalculation, an accidental clash that could spiral out of control. Diplomatically, the challenge is immense. The U.S. is trying to rally international support, provide humanitarian aid to Gaza, and keep lines of communication open with Arab partners, many of whom are under intense domestic pressure over the suffering of Palestinian civilians. The traditional American-led peace process and the two-state solution seem more distant than ever. Every choice the White House makes is under a global microscope, with allies questioning its strategy and adversaries exploiting every perceived weakness. The U.S. is trying to put out a fire, but it's also standing in a room full of gasoline. So where do we go from here? The chessboard is set, and the next moves will define the Middle East for a generation. Let's recap. We've seen how a deep-rooted historical conflict has erupted, how it's shaking the global economy, and how it's creating a power vacuum that Russia and China are eager to fill, all while placing the United States in a strategic vice. Looking ahead, I see 3 potential scenarios. The first is a contained burn. This is the best case, though still tragic, scenario where the conflict remains largely confined to Gaza. Through intense international diplomacy and pressure, a ceasefire is eventually reached, but the underlying issues remain unresolved, guaranteeing another cycle of violence in the future. The balance of power in the region would be bruised but not broken. The second scenario is a regional conflagration. This is the nightmare scenario. The conflict escalates, drawing in Hezbollah from the north and potentially Iran itself. This would trigger a massive war across the Middle East, shatter the global economy, and force a direct military intervention from the United States. The result would be catastrophic instability and a complete redrawing of the regional map, likely leaving Iran and its allies in a stronger position amidst the chaos. The third and perhaps most likely scenario is the protracted struggle and strategic realignment. In this future, the acute fighting subsides, but gives way to a long-term, low-intensity conflict. The U.S. becomes bogged down, draining its resources and attention. This allows China and Russia to solidify their influence, not just in the Middle East, but globally. Arab states, losing faith in American leadership, will increasingly look east, creating new economic and security alliances that exclude the West. This isn't a sudden shift, but a slow, grinding change that ultimately redefines the global order. The Israel-Hamas conflict is more than a headline. It's the catalyst for this new era. The world we knew is changing, and the aftershocks of this moment will be felt for years to come. Thanks so much for watching. This is a complex and evolving situation, and it's more important than ever to stay informed. If you found this analysis helpful, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the events shaping our world. We read all your comments, so let us know your thoughts below. Stay safe and see you next time.